All right. Good evening, everyone. Listen, we are so glad to have you on this first installment of the Perfecting Podcast. Um, our theme for tonight is an amazing theme because it's something that often comes to light, especially during the holiday season. And that is this idea of navigating grief, right? Navigating the new. Um, Thinking about the fact that oftentimes holiday seasons are often the main reminder um, that there are people that are missing from the table. So our hope for today is to build a dialogue, a compassionate dialogue that normalizes communal grieving, empowers healing practices, and invites collective engagement. Mm-hmm. All right, so for all my guests that are watching, we're trying to navigate this to be a safe space. Please feel free to use the comments and the chat to ask questions, to do your remembering, and to do some of the grief work, the remembering practices that we will talk about throughout this evening. Understand that grief is more than just dealing with death. Mm-hmm. It's dealing with loss, mm-hmm. Right? And so to kick this off, I am joined by my amazing host, co-host, and spouse of 25 years.
Yep, around the corner.
Around the corner, Karen Hilton Bradford, Dr. Karen Hilton Bradford, who has done this work. And before, as we bring the other panelists on, our journey with grief began. Really, it began in February of 2008, mm-hmm. when our sister, Karen's sister, went in for a simple wisdom tooth extraction. And due to some complications, never came out of the room. And it was traumatic because our daughter was there. And she saw April leave and never got to see April come back. Yeah. And then from there, in December of 2016, our daughter Noelle was on her way to a singing event in Baltimore. And we sent her off and got word about 9 o'clock that morning, that Saturday morning, December 17th, that she died in a car accident. And that kind of started that piece of grief on the biological side. But then
we experienced a marital grief, the loss of our marriage as it was, right? And so that was compounded grief. So you have April, Noelle, and then marriage. And so it's definitely been a journey of trying to become whole again. And so we're still working on that process.
And it is a process. Mm-hmm. I'm going to bring to the stage next someone I met that same weekend. So this is January. Fast forward, I'm in Richmond for our Doctor of Ministry cohort for the 2019 cohort. And I am introduced to Mary Edosomwan and her story, and I'm gonna let her tell it, parallels so amazingly. So coming to the stage from the Center for Grief and Wholeness, Dr. Mary. You are muted, but come on in.
Ari, thank you so much. Thank you. I will move this out of the way. Thank you, Napoleon. It's so good to see the family, and I'm glad the journey back together as spouse, husband, and wife is on. Grief has its way of taking a toll on marriages. That's another subject. So I was my DMed, like he said, I think that was our first year also, all together. How I got there is still a miracle for me because my son was attending Virginia Union University for his Masters of Divinity when he died. 2011. So traumatic. Um, at the time, I've already gotten 2 master's degree, if not 3. I wasn't trying to go back to school ever again in my life, but I had the encounter after he was gone that I was to go back and finish what he has started. Of course, I wrestle with the Holy Spirit. I wrestle. I'm too old. I gave all the excuses in the whole world. Finally, the text that shut me up was, "It is well." And to today, that scripture follows me. It is well. Whatever you do and God sent you to do, it will be well. And indeed, I finished this master's. But let me back down a little bit. The very first day I agreed to go to Richmond, begin the journey for MDiv, that night I dreamt I was given a mandate to do a course to get a degree in grief and loss, death and dying. And I was like, what? Everybody already think I was crazy driving from Fairfax to Richmond for the next 3 years. Now I'm going to test. I couldn't tell anybody that what happened that night. I kept it. The only one I told was my dean. I just asked the question, is there a grief and loss at Virginia Junior University? He said, no, no. Maybe when I'm done, I can go to Virginia. What is the other one? VCU. I might be able to get something in the genetological side of grief. I forgot all about it because I'm here for something. I have just getting started. Fast forward the year I was to graduate, 2016, that summer, just before graduation, Dr. Benson, I can't remember his name now. Why am I forgetting? One of my mentor also brought grief and loss to Virginia Union as a course. He ran into me in the library and he said, Mary, I have a class you have to take. Mind you, I was already registered for 2 other classes. I took it. Not only did I take the class, I finished. I became a TA with him. Not only did I become a TA, I got into PhD and I did the work that I'm doing now. So got a degree, a doctorate of grief and loss, death and dying, and started the Center for Grief and Wholeness. What you see on the background of my Zoom is my theological journey. The death cry is the first step, which is a call to the community that something has happened to you. Death is in the house. It has entered through the door, the window, the street, however it happened. And then you go into lament. On the bottom side is the compassion, self-compassion, your compassion, compassion for mother, and then hope on the one side, hope, and then finally you get to a place of wholeness. It's a journey. It is a journey like no other journey we have ever been in our lives. So I am grateful to be in the company discussing anything relating to grief. And I have just released the book, The Empty Chair, which is in this season is so incredible. Just a little bit about The Empty Chair. I was invited to DC Nanny Borough House to come do a walk for them. I didn't know that community, but what I found out was that for the first time, I am seeing people living without any generation of relationship around them. I mean, a child whose mother died when he was little, raised by the grandma. Before he could finish high school, the grandma died. No home, no house, no rent. They can't do anything. We end up in the street, but they end up in this home. And as God will have it in this home, each one meeting there, they start forging relationship. The sister from another mother, the brother from another mother. And that is how life, grief, God is in the midst of our grief and he's working things out. That blew my mind. So thank you. I know we have more to talk about, but I will stop right there for now.
Oh man, oh man, that is, thank you and welcome. Listen, and that ties into our last panelist. 2016 was also the year that Dr. Jamie finished her MDiv at Virginia Union. And so I'm gonna just bring this familiar guest. We've been rocking grief for the last 4 years, I think, 3 or 4 years. So come on into the party and tell us how you got here, Dr. J.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Quite frankly, I think my understanding of grief has evolved over time, but my introduction to grief, I am a survivor of early childhood SA, right? And so using that language for folks who know, and I'll type it in the chat maybe for others who don't, but I know we're going to define grief for folks a little bit later, but there's this way that I, was encountering intimate partner violence within my family structure, early childhood SA, all of that are losses, right? That, yes, trauma, but also losses that one experiences. So I think just from an early encounter with grief, that this has been something I've always known. Now, if we think about my explicit work with grief, right? What did it mean for me to do work around grief? I would say that I was licensed and ordained eventually at Metropolitan Baptist Church. And when Dr. H. Preacher Hicks Jr. was there, church was, large church, it's still a large church, but large church, we had about 50 associate ministers, and we each had these assignments. And one of those assignments was on the sort of funeral and bereavement ministry. And at first it was 50 people. So you kind of you think 50 people, one time a year, you're responsible for your week. And if nothing happens during your week, you're kind of in the clear. Or if something happens in your week, you have to do a little bit more work. Eventually what happened was that group that was large eventually got down to 4 people. Now there were still 50 associate ministers, but now there were just sort of 4 people who were doing this funeral and bereavement thing. And every year I said, I'm not doing this again next year. Like, I did it for 3 years, I'm done. For some reason that year would end and I would say, I'm not doing this next year. I've done it for 4 years, I'm done. And then year 7, I'm not, right? So I stayed there and I talked to a mentor, the Reverend Dr. Cheryl McMillan Duckett now. And I told her, I said, I don't want to do this, right? I'm also a proclaimer. And so that is preaching, but it's also poetry and speaking in other ways and in front of other communities. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of sort of having to lean into this death and dying space. And she told me to just pause for a second, lean in a little bit closer and listen, because families would talk about my presence with them during this time, right? Mm-hmm. So they wouldn't necessarily say, they would say thank you to me, but later they would just say, oh, if something else ever happens, you got to send Minister J. Like that was the kind of feedback that she's getting. And so I did lean in, and eventually I was like, okay, that there's some gift here. So I have some gift here, some skill, because my mentor is a psychotherapist, right? So I'm being trained in a certain way. And so I leaned in, and this is, you know, early 20s leaning in. And I also have friends who, when they had folks in their family who died, would ask me to come by and be with them, or if they were at the end of life, come by and be with them, because I had a certain calmness with my presence. And I don't know that I knew what to do as much as I think just the way I present myself says I know what I'm doing. Y'all know what so I don't know that I had answers for what to do, right? I'm talking a little bit earlier, like 19. And so I don't know that I had answers for what to do as much as it appeared that I was comfortable and had answers, right? And so people would call me, and I continued to appear to be comfortable and have answers in this place that I'm learning to lean in a little bit more. So that's, you know, just my own early childhood losses. There are other losses I can name, and I think maybe we'll do that more in conversation. But certainly, I would say a catalyst for me leaning into this work was it being an assignment in my faith space. Now I'm more certainly much more beyond Christianity, but in my faith space early on. And I leaned in and I realized that I had the skill, I had the passion, I had the presence, right? And the knowledge, to sort of learning about death and dying. I started doing that then. And we know that beyond that, I started doing work in all of the ways that we experience loss in the world. And so that's kind of when Dr. Napoleon and I first sort of started talking with loss navigation and thoughtful transitions. It was really me saying how I'm doing this grief work in the broadness of loss as a human experience versus death. And you'll hear me saying death. Those of you who are listening and watching online, you'll hear me say death. It's when I'm talking about someone at the end of life. I typically don't use euphemisms because it's important for me to say that word at the end of life. So you'll hear me saying death when we're talking about someone at the end of life. So that's how I entered in. I know we want to do some more conversation, but that's the way I leaned into this grief world.
I love this, right? And this will get to the next question, but our entrances into the work were all different, right? Some were because of repeated request and presence, right? Others were because of a divine calling in the form of a vision, right? Others were, you know, our own experiences with death itself that helped us, because once we experienced it, other people kept asking, we saw you look so strong. We saw you look this way. How can you help us navigate? I love this. I love this. And I appreciate you taking the time to be on. In your work, how do you define loss? And part two, what forms of loss do we often overlook in our definition of what is attached to grief? So how do you define loss? And then what are some forms that we overlook?
You want to kick it off, Dr. Mary? You all right? You want me to kick it off?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm fine.
Okay. So if I think about sort of a definition of grief, because I think that's where you're going with us, right? This description of grief. Grief is, as I use it, is our natural response. Pause there, natural response. So nothing's wrong with you. Those of you who are listening, there's nothing wrong with you. It is your natural, it is a natural, I'm gonna say that one more time, natural response to real or perceived loss, change, transition. And I also include in that unmet expectations, unrealized dreams, and shattered assumptions. Ultimately, loss, change, and transition really captures it all, because that is death and non-death, right? That is hair loss, relationship loss, mobility, divorce, and the death of your people. Because even loved ones gives us a certain kind of idea around relationship. And I don't know that everybody's your loved one as much as they are your people, right? People. So yeah, it is the broadness of grief is the natural thing that occurs when your attachment to people, places, and things has been severed in some way, right? Severed because someone has died, severed because your relationship is estranged, right? Because I even say that grief is less about love. There are certain sayings that we have, and listen, if y'all say it, it's okay, it's cool. I just may not say it, right? So there's certain things that we say, right? Certain things that we say, like grief is our grief. We grieve because we loved, and I don't say that, and I'm not because it's not true, but I think grief is more associated with attachment more broadly than love specifically. Mm-hmm. And so this, again, our natural response to loss, change, transition, unmet expectations, unrealized dreams, and shattered assumptions, real or perceived, death or non-death.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that. Go ahead, Dr. Mary, jump on that.
It's very simple. It is a loss of an attachment. And to the extent that you love the individual, the greater is going to be your grief, the more painful it will be. I always say, if you were to look at a two-sided coin, the head and the tail, one side is love and the other one is grief. And they are almost inseparable. The mother's love, and if you look at the generation of people around you, from grandma to uncles and brothers, sister, the closest attachment and the most painful, because I have been through all of that, is the loss of a child. And the pain is so excruciating that you don't even wish it on your enemy. And so when we look at the various ways that death happen, especially the acute grief, you talk to someone today, they ate breakfast with you, and then a few hours later, they are gone. You are totally trust in this valley so deep that it takes the grace of God to get you back out of there. But if someone has been sick for a long time, as in the case of anticipatory grief, sometimes you are grieving along for years and days and months, and then finally, even the person themselves say, let me go. I've suffered enough. So the grief is not the same. The pain is not, it's still there, but it's not the same. Then you have the non-death losses, like jobs and careers and business investments. You thought you were going to retire on this business, but everything you put into it is gone like a smoke. And so you grieve. So there are degrees of grieving all throughout our lives. But the most painful one is the one with the closest attachment to you. And when God said to Jeremiah, go and tell the wailing women, go and tell the women to teach the children, teach the people how to grieve. He knew that when the Babylonian comes into it enters into their streets, there is going to be so much death that everyone will have to grieve. And that is why grief also is a communion grief. You heal through it. I tell people, you go through depressions, which we will get to later on, but the more you can surround yourself with people that care, with people like Dr. Jamie was saying, the people will say, thank you for being with me, just the presence. She didn't think she was doing anything, but by her presence, they felt better later, and they remember. And that's where we are.
So you messed me up. I'm gonna start with Jamie because Jamie started it off because she done revamped her definition from last year. I was so hyped about going into this grief is the divine opportunity to reimagine life.
No, that is so, but that is not, yes, that's still a definition.
Okay,
right? So,
okay.
So that's, I'm glad you said that. So grief is an emotion, and it's grieving is a process, right? So grief, the emotion, that's that feeling. That's that feeling we have. Grieving, the process, is one, it is something, grieving the process, grieving, grief, she. I have personified her as she, right? She is a capacity that is in us, right? Because ultimately, spirit, the universe, God, Allah, language that makes sense for you and your community, knows that you can't die at the place at the place where something else or someone else has died, right? That you are not to die at this point of death. So whether it is child or parent or partner, that death does not mean you have to die there. So there is something in us. There is something, some spirit power in us, process, spirit power in us that helps us reimagine ourselves and reorient ourselves into the world, because the goal is for you to continue to live and to be fully alive after loss. If you're going to encounter loss throughout your lifespan, you can't die like it feels like a death. I've died here. And grieving, the process, says, let's reorient to life. Let's help you reimagine what it means to be alive in this new world as a new self. Because at every time you experience a loss, you are not the same, and neither is the world. So the grieving process, grief from that perspective, I believe is spirit's power, capacity in you to help you reimagine yourself and reorient yourself so that you can be fully alive in the world after loss. I still hold that as definition. I just, it just depends on conversation and how I use it. But that is still definition. And grief is a process that, if you think about, I talk about Walter Brueggemann, and I'm gonna stop because I know you have a question. But we think about being orientation, disorientation, reorientation, right? When you experience that loss, you are in complete disorientation. Grieving, the process, helps you reorient yourself. And you are doing that throughout your lifetime in different ways, because each loss hits you a bit differently, as Dr. Mary already said, right? So you are reorienting yourself in new ways, and maybe the person who lost their job doesn't have to reorient in the same way as the person whose child has died, right? That's not the same kind of reorientation, but it still is a reorientation into a new world as a new self. So yes, I still use all of that as definition, description, because I also want people to recognize that I think whiteness has centered how we understand and move through grief. And I do everything within my power to decolonize our thought around what it means to grieve and be well in the world apart from the white gaze.
See, and that we're gonna get to that. That's like 3 questions down. Like you got me there, but this natural response,
yes,
really should free us.
Yes.
Because the reality is, at the death moment, and even beyond the death moment, we don't really know how we are going to react. And every day, it's not something we can compare. Karen and I went through Noel's death at the same time, but we grieved differently.
Because y'all ain't the same person.
Right.
Y'all ain't the same person. I see you, Dr. Mary. You was great. Kick in something.
Yeah, jump on in there.
I know something that Dr. Napoleon said just gave me a light bulb moment, because the thing about grief is it occurs at the soul level. It's a wounded spirit and soul. All throughout our lives, if as a child or even an adult, if I break a leg or I cut myself, my mother or somebody would teach me to say, oh, go put a bandage on it and fix it up. But death is at the level of your soul. And no one has ever taught us how to heal our soul. And in each one of us, we are different. We are going to react differently. And like I said, to the extent of that attachment, mother, umbilical cord, and all that type of attachment, that closeness, you are going to grieve. When the soul is wounded, and this is where I have found, and even in my data collection and analysis, point to the fact that the more you were into your relationship with your creator, your maker, your God, the scripture, the Bible, all of that, the better you are able to navigate. I didn't say you will not feel pain, but that goes to what Dr. Jamie was looking to with Dr. Brinkman, with the type of disorientation when it comes to lament. You will see the Bible is full of lament. The churches does not teach us what it means. And so we go back to God and we say, why me? I was a Sunday school teacher. I brought all these children. I sent them to college. I did this, I did that. And mine, I had to lose. What did I do? Why? But God is ready to answer everybody's question, just like he did for Job. So who are you to ask at what point in time anyone should be born or depart from this life? Were you there when I formed this child in your womb? Did you get an email that told you that XYZ on that date, that's when it was going to depart? No, you don't. So soul healing is what we are on when we begin our death cry to a place of wholeness. You are totally transformed. That's exactly what everybody's echoing here, Dr. Jamie put it so beautifully. That transformation, you are never the same person. I said, and I often tell people closest to me, the woman that I was, the mother I was before my only son died, it's not this person here. No, totally transformed, totally different. I don't look at life the same way. I don't worry about anything anymore. Nothing seems to faze me. I'm just, hey, because I've been where I thought I had it all. I was good. I was going to retire. I wasn't going back to school again. And then one thing changed and my whole life fell apart. And so it is a journey.
It is a journey. It is a journey. I want to go to what Dr. Mary, you started talking about, this idea of communal grief.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to, because Dr. Jamie talked about this decolonization and this removing of white gaze, which kind of goes, in my mind, communal grief and ancestral healing as it relates to grief that often has been taken away from the wailing and the ceremonial stuff practices. So I kind of want to just jump in there. What is the grief that belongs in community, if not all of it? And what happened to where we have removed community from our process of healing?
Great question. You have to go back to the African adage on what a community is. Your mom and your dad, they are just two individuals. But everybody in your neighborhood, they are also your mom and your dad, your aunties, your uncles. So when imagine your house at the end of the street, the middle of the street or somewhere, and you raise that dead cry, everybody comes running. Everybody come and the news spread that something has happened. Mary has just lost her child and you are surrounded. You are not alone. They sit with you. And in my work, I have found out that the people that did not have community because of the lifestyle in America, they end up with so much health complications. I kid you not. People, there's no one there to tell you to drink water or even offer you water. Because when you are so isolated because of the Western lifestyle, no one is really there for you. People come and they're camping your house. If you are not eating, they're not eating. And then they bring you water. If you drink yours, I'll drink mine. But what you are doing when you do that, oh, before I say what you do, we also know how we take macaroni and cheese and fried chicken and we go drop it in the house. But we do not stay long enough to make sure that the person actually eats. When you are gone, 3 days later, 6 days later, that food that you brought is in the trash. They are not eating.
Or the people that are coming to visit are eating the food and not giving the person that's grieving a chance to eat.
So at the end of the grief, you find people later on having suffered dehydration. The kidney is bad now, that you had to go remove one kidney. There are people living with one kidney as a result of the grief of their child. They are barely surviving. Blood pressure has already happened. All kinds of things begin to happen in the body because we did not grieve. We did not have that communal relationship that we needed to support us. And that is why also in the Western world, we have so many side effects, undesirable, let me qualify, undesirable side effect with the use of drug, alcohol, sleeping pills. If you have to take something, I took some sleeping pills. I was prescribed antidepressant. I didn't take that after I read the side effect. No, but what saved me in my complicated grief was that I had a sister in Greensboro. And when I could no longer get out of bed and crawl, they came, they got me. And I spent maybe 5-6 months over there, forgetting about everything else in my life, the job, the whatever, didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
That is community, saving, reaching out to someone. We need it. We need it so badly in the Black community, in our churches. You know, in the Jewish community, in their synagogue, when someone dead dies, they stay with them. Somebody bring is Dr. Bradford and the wife, Dr. and Mrs. Karen, to bring the food on this day. They bring it. Everybody eats. Those who are visiting that day, and they do that on and off. For how many days? 90 days.
Wow. Wow.
By the time people start living, now you are feeling a little better. That's why I said one of my mission for Center for Grief and Wholeness is you would not grieve alone. As long as I'm around, I will be there. Lonely sufferers of grief is hard. It is so hard. And the Western world has done us such a disservice in the way we relate to our brothers and our sisters. And I'm sorry, the church have not helped us much. We don't cry here. We don't do this. They know all the things you are not supposed to do, except what they're supposed to do. They don't.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah, and I love that. So Mama E.T. Harvey always reminds us that there is no individual action that does not have a communal response, right? And that is not like, that's not necessarily hers, but she reminds us this. Like, we know we can go back, right, generations that understood there's no sort of individual action that does not have a communal response. And grief is universal, it's personal, and it's also communal. And the challenge is, one of the challenges that whiteness or this Western way of thinking has, one, redefined for us what family looks like, right? So this idea of these sort of insulated and isolated groups on their own, right, on their own as families and community, that they're self-contained, right? So that already says, I don't go to my neighbor for support or help, because I'm going to be a self-contained unit. And we teach this. And so even in I may eat the ideology that I must be self-contained. And so if I must be self-contained, then I am not going to look for community to join me in this journey, because I have been taught I must be self-contained. So you take folks who have been taught, who have eaten an ideology of self-containment, and of course, we're not going to sort of lean into community in ways that are helpful and healing, right? So that's one thing. So I love when Dr. Mary talked about that, because I'm not going to lean into community. I am self-contained. And I will live with the shame of not being self-contained, versus understanding that maybe that was never the idea anyway, right? So I will live with the shame that I'm supposed to be self-contained, but I'm dying over here, and I'll live with that shame. So that's one thing. The second thing, I love that you all talked about the sort of, say, bringing of food and care to someone's house, and then leaving, say, before the food is digested, right? I haven't even taken a bite, and you're gone. And that is when I teach. I don't even really use the term doula anymore, but teach companions and things. We talk about, this is risky work, right? It's risky for me to stay with you during that time, during this acute grief time. It's risky. Why? Because in some ways, I have to be able to hold space and lean into all of what you're feeling. I don't necessarily have to have the answers, but I've eaten an ideology that tells me I do need to have answers and be able to fix. So you're saying, when I bring this food to you, I need to leave before you require of me something that says I need to open up and be vulnerable and sit with your pain, which might also remind me of mine, which might also let me know that my siblings in Gaza are in pain, which might then take me to my siblings in Rwanda who are in pain, which might, right? So it's dangerous, it's risky we're called to the risk, but it's still risky. That's like when people say, how you doing today? They in their mind, I already hear you saying fine. Why? Because fine allows me to keep going. And if you're doing something other than fine, that means I have to listen. I have to open up, again, be vulnerable to the pain that you might reintroduce me to. And we don't like the pain. I don't want to sit with you and your pain. Why do I need to sit that? Why can't you be self-contained? Right? So this idea that many of us have been taught has become a way of being. Now, I want to make sure I name this. I know plenty of folks that believe in community, that are right. So we know the people, we know folks that understand community, the power of community. And still we know that this sort of this whiteness as an ideology, as a social construct, really tries to teach us to be some other way. And that other way is usually fractured, right? Is usually fractured and disconnected, versus recognizing that we never heal in isolation. I know that's an African proverb, an African adage, and we know that folks like Bell Hooks and Toni Morrison, right, and Audre Lorde talk about, you don't heal in isolation, right? We heal in community. And I think the last thing that I would say, because I just wrote some notes down, a society that is emotionally illiterate, of course, grief is not welcomed in the space, right? We teach people how to be commodities, how to be products, and how to produce. I teach you how to be part of this production, so that on the other end, it's really tied to money. It's tied to capitalism. That's what we teach. Because to pause and grieve means I'm not creating something that you're trying to get me to create in many ways to make you rich. Let's just talk about it, right? So if grief is a whole person experience, I experience this in my mind. It's mental, it's emotional, it's relational. If grief is a whole person experience, and you need to pause because of the loss that you've experienced, why would whiteness want you to pause? Why would they want you to not go to work for a week, a month? Why would I need you here to keep producing? And so in some ways, whether it is our inability to grieve, or as one of my mentors, Dr. Tashelle Bourdaire, talks about, she coined a phrase called suffocated grief, which is grief that is punished. And when she talked about it, it was really about young Black children. But I think we can even expand that definition a bit too, right? And I'm not saying that was the only way she used it, but a lot of her work has been around Black youth. Dr. Tashelle Bourdaire, y'all can look her up, a brilliant genius of a sibling, brilliant woman. But this idea, suffocated grief, is your grief experience is punished. Right? We understand disenfranchised, where societal and systemic structures don't support your grieving process, right? We ignore it. So folks who've had an abortion grieve, but society is not going to create space for you to name your grief. Why? Because that's an abortion. You have divorce. Oh, right. We're not going to create space for certain people's grief. You are a sibling who is in the carceral system. We're not going to create space for your grief. Your grief might be disenfranchised, right? Your grief experience, but it's beyond disenfranchisement. She's talking about grief that is punished. And so again, in society where grief is disenfranchised, grief is punished, right? We've also eaten the ideology of self-containment. I must do all on my own, or else live with the shame of not being able to do it. Of course, there is this disconnect with what it means to grieve and lament in community. What does it mean for all of us to wail? Of course, there's a disconnect there. And I love that, Dr. Mary, this is part of my work, is the church is complicit. Now, is your church complicit? Maybe not, right? Okay, maybe your church is not. But the church broadly is complicit in teaching people self-containment. Don't bring your grief here. Listen, I know a lot of pastors, I do, and I know, yes. And the church also teaches this idea of self-containment. Keep your grief, keep that to yourself, keep it within this time frame. You're only allowed to grieve certain things, right? This way that grief must look respectable. I tell you right now, mine is probably not, right? And I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with the Black Philly girl Ratchet Grief Project in me that grieves. I'm perfectly okay with that, and believe that my God is okay with that too, right? So yeah, of course there's a challenge of grieving in community. And that's one of the reasons why I do my work, and I'm listening to Dr. Mary, obviously. Even if we do our work differently and in different spaces, ultimately it's the same work to get people to realize that they have the capacity to live again after their loss, right? To remember themselves whole after a loss. So yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything that has been said. And I do want to say this one last thing, and I'll get out the way.
No.
So I do have questions for God. I do bring questions. I raise questions. Oh, listen, big questions. And I'm not saying they get answered, but you know, I think you ought to be big enough to handle my questions. And I just finished rereading The Bluest Eye. Mm-hmm. And listen, y'all, it's just Toni Morrison, but there's a chapter in there where the person is preparing to pray, and they talk about the creator of the universe, auspicious, but they do all this part. Then they say, "Dear God, the purpose of this letter is to familiarize you with facts which either have escaped your notice or which you have chosen to ignore. And do y'all understand the power in that prayer for me, even around our loss, right? Like, God, I know you hear me, or are you ignoring me? Or have you not checked your email yet? Per my last email, Lord, this is the right. And so I even in community, and you got to know what community you're in, right? In community, there are ways that I might say that in one community that I may not be able to say it exactly in another community, right? And knowing that is important because the work itself is the same, even if I have to speak French over here and Spanish over, the work itself is the same. So that prayer, I have been living that prayer, just the power in it, the purpose, right? My request has escaped your notice, or you are choosing to ignore me, Lord. Which one is it?
Listen,
that's I'm grieving.
That's a rewrite of Habakkuk, right? that is a 21st century rewrite of this Habakkuk. How long? How long, God, are you going to let this happen and you not come to my, like I don't exist? I'm talking to you, right? And you're not listening. But what you said, this ideology of self-containment and this failing of the Black church or the church universal looks like, and I am guilty. So I gotta redo pastoral care teaching. It's this, okay, you go to the hospital room and you wait to the first commercial for the TV they're watching and you leave because you don't want to sit, because we've been told you don't sit with them because they need to heal. They need the doctors to do what they do. When the reality is we've gotten calls from members that say, we're lonely, no one's here. Will you send someone to pray? So when you think about grief, we do a great job till the homegoing celebration. And as soon as the repast is over,
back to normal.
Ain't nobody stopping by. You got to talk to the peace lilies or whatever flowers they left at the house. So I love it. So going into this, how then do we support? The season is coming up. What does support look like for someone living with loss? What does it look like from a communal, from an individual, from a clergy standpoint? What does it look like?
That's a great question. Karen, did you want to answer that first?
No. I was clarifying, giving us some concrete steps, actionable steps would be great.
Okay, good. But before I give the steps, I want to appeal to everyone. Before, you never know when you're going to get into that space of grief, or who is going to be missing in your family, or where your empty chair is who is going to depart from that table. But I say this, please make yourself friendly. Have your own community. Learn, somebody call you, return the call, invite people. Just make yourself friendly. Perhaps if you reach out to 10 people, you might get 2. You might get 3. So that when that empty chair is now sitting and looking at you on your face, someone can be in your house to spend a little time. There is someone you can talk to, maybe cry on their shoulder, and they will cry with you. And I love the word self-containment, the way the society, the Western world has taught us. We are Africans. We are communal. We are brothers and sisters and uncles and cousins. We go at length to make sure one of our own is not left in the gutters of grief. And so before we even begin that first step of what you do in this season that is bustling with shopping and glitters and celebration, but you are not. Deep down inside, you are not. You are being reminded of the person that is not here. And some of us are not able to share about that loss. That is what makes this space so difficult for us. There's nobody to talk to. Nobody wants to hear you talk about your son that died 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 11 years ago, 20 years ago. Are you still grieving? 3 months ago, you lost your daughter and you are still the mess? What's the matter with you? Snap out of it. This is what we do to each other. But I want you to know, to everyone at the sound of my voice, grief is here to stay. And you don't know what is going to trigger you. You don't know what is going to make you remember. Thanksgiving, you might just be, oh, you thought you were going to make macaroni or cheese or sweet potato as in the thing of my son. Suddenly you remember, oh, he likes it with some pineapples. Okay. Are you going to put the pineapple in? Because now you have just been triggered to remember what the person that is not. Yes, you put it in. And you are able to share that on the table with your guests to say, my son used to like this. I want to share. You talk about him. You talk about her. And that is how we get to free ourselves and give ourselves a little grace. But then there are other people, and I've been there, that doesn't have anybody coming for this Thanksgiving or Christmas. Their children are grown. Empty nesters are there. Some of them are not coming. The very first Thanksgiving after my son departed, my daughter, the youngest one, the oldest one was in South Africa somewhere. And I asked her to come home. After that dinner, I found her sitting on the couch, so I sat with her. She looked at me and she said, Mom, why did you ask me to come home? Now I know, after I have done the grief work and studies, siblings attachment is even stronger than mother and father, and because they dreamt together. They had their own life, what they said they were going to be, what they said they were going to do, and all of a sudden, that dream is gone. No one is talking to them. They will say to the daughters or the ones that are left, how's your mom doing? Hey, no one is asking them how they are doing. This thing is so complicated that we really need to take each person in that family, each person in that community, each person in that neighborhood. They all matters and they are all grieving. So when you get on this dining table, please, if you are able to, share your grief. It is okay. If you are not in an environment that you can share, maybe you are in the wrong environment. Because after my daughter told me that, I didn't ask anybody to come home anymore. Guess what? I got up and leave. Now I'm the first to tell them, okay, I got my ticket. I'm not going to be here for Christmas. Before they got married, they would say, oh, they're going to go spend Thanksgiving with their friend here or there. Okay, now I said, I'm not here. I'm going on the cruise. Last Christmas, New Year's, I was in Europe. I am not waiting around for nobody to come babysit me anymore. So, parents, I'm speaking to you. Don't let your life just dwindle down the toilet because you've lost someone. Dr. Jamie said it in light of what God ordained for each and every one of us was not for you to diminish or die because you lost someone. It's another beginning for you. And what are you going to do with this chance? So don't sit at home. Christmas, who cares about shopping? I don't shop anymore. It don't matter. I shop in my closet. But I save up my money. I'm going somewhere. My ticket is already bought for Christmas. I'm not waiting for nobody. Just came back on the cruise on my 70th birthday. Do something with your life, you all. I know it's grief. I know. You will get there. For me now, it's about 15 years, 14 years. Yeah. But at the beginning, I didn't think I would get to where I am today. And that is the journey to wholeness. When you get there, a state of equilibrium, a state of liberation, a state of being in the presence of the Lord, where there is liberty, there is joy, there is abundance. It's all here. Thank you.
Wow. Y'all have both just said everything I wanted to say anyway. So y'all just keep going. I gotta get some water.
Listen, I love the because I do have community. I have just such a beloved, I would even say communities, right? But that I am surrounded by community. So it's being in community. So I love that you said, make yourself friendly. Dr. Mary, I will be using that. Make yourself friendly, because in so many ways we are not. Right? In so many ways, and we're in so many ways we're also taught not to, right? And so I just love make yourself friendly. My heart was warm because that's just a powerful it's a powerful intention to make yourself friendly. And so
do it for you. Nobody's
right. That just is so make yourself friendly. And so I one of the things, and you said this too, and somebody in the chat was like, you said grief is here to stay. And I say grief is a lifelong companion. So same sort of concept, which is why we must learn to befriend grief, the process. Now, I'm not saying be friends with the emotion. The emotion is just like any other emotion you feel. It's not going to last forever. I'm not saying, but befriending the process that allows you to reimagine yourself and live, right? Be fully alive, because we can be here and not fully alive. And wow. I've lived in that space where I woke up every morning and I was doing things and then I became fully alive, and I was like, oh, this is different. This is able to dream again. This is right. So different places, right? So I get that. In terms of this holiday season, and we'll be talking about this tomorrow too with Dr. Danny Bahuro. What does it mean to, I love that you talked about the dish, like these practical things that we might do for ourselves, with other folks. So the idea of creating that dish. I tell people every now and then, my grandmother, I usually introduce myself as the granddaughter of Alberta Brown, a cousin of Pauline Bennett, the niece of Salam. They transitioned in 1995, 1989, and 2023, respectively, but they are still three of the most important people in my world, right? And so when I would go to sleep sometimes, and remember, my grandmother's been gone since 1995, so we are 30 years in, and someone in the dream, likely my grandmama, say something about collard greens. Now, I like collard greens, but it's not something that I make on a regular basis, right? But just in the middle of the spring, it'll be collard greens. So that's I gotta go make collard greens now, because the feeling, the reminder, the person came and said something about collard greens, and so that idea of creating a dish that your person loved, liked, right? Doing that is part of what we might do during the holidays as a grief practice, right? That I might make the dish. Also, we humans are storytellers. That's really what makes us different from other animals, is that we tell these stories.
Yes.
And so during the holidays, we used to tell stories. So I'll do this. My grandmother used to have Thanksgiving dinner at her house. In fact, she had Sunday dinner at her house every Sunday, and there were probably about 50 people, because her two sisters that lived in Philadelphia would come. So it's the elders, my grandmother, her two sisters, her brother, then their children, my mom and her people, that level, and then me and my cousins, right? So this house would be full every Sunday. 1995, when my grandmother died, guess what also died? Sunday dinners at her house. And everybody went to their own houses to start having their own dinners, right? You see that? So that's what we had. But my mom started having dinner at her house, and she didn't want to have dinner unless I came home, right? She didn't want to have big invite people. So I started coming home because I realized that at that point, they weren't going to do it without me. So if it was going to happen, I needed to be present. And so we would tell stories. We're telling the stories. And that's a way to keep, to process, to have a grief practice. It's also a way to share, to do it in community. And it's also storytelling. So there are younger cousins who, they're sort of like my nieces and nephews, but they're my cousins by relation. They know stories about my grandmother when the oldest one was born 3 months after my grandmother died. So he don't know her, right? But he's telling stories during the holidays. Remember when Grandma Birdie said, da, 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 da. Well, and everybody tells the stories. Why? Because we've told the stories at the dinner table over and over, the same stories. And so storytelling, for those who are looking for just how might I engage and embrace and befriend my own grief during this holiday, certainly making dishes, if that's what comes up to you. Storytelling is always a beautiful thing that we do. And sometimes we do storytelling and we give the person an item. So whoever has the item in their hand gets to tell the story. And then everybody gets to comment, but then they pass it. And now I get to, my story, right? And you can't tell the same story. So we do it. So we make it also this sort of fun, right? So there's laughter and there might be tears. So that's one thing that we do during the holiday. For those who need some space, because the truth is that sometimes you're like, I don't know if I can do the holiday with y'all this year. It might be so fresh that I just want to sit in my own space and maybe weep a little more then honor that for yourself, right? The challenge is, and Dr. Mary talked about this, the challenge is that when we withdraw, right? And as a womanist practice, we believe in withdrawal for self-care, self-preservation. Like, I need to withdraw from this to care for myself. I will re-enter community. The challenge is when someone withdraws, sometimes we leave them. Let them withdraw, but make sure you know where they are. You got to come back, and if they don't resurface, I got to come back and get you. But if this is a holiday where you're like, I don't know if I can do a bunch of people, then don't. It is okay if you choose for this holiday season to order you something or to make your own meals, right? And do your own thing, binge a TV show. That is perfectly fine, right? So recognizing that all of the ways we move through grief are going to look different for each of us because we are different, and making space for, without shame, you to be able to move through your grief. So making a dish, we do the favorite song thing. So we say, hey, if grandma loves Smokey, then guess what's playing all day? Smokey Robinson. I can say Smokey Wonder. Y'all hear that? Stevie Wonder, Smokey Robinson, or at least Smokey Robinson Station, right? What sound do you need around you during this holiday season that might feel soothing and healing, that might feel like a warm blanket around you? So if it's not the people that feel like a warm blanket, maybe it's the music, maybe it's the meal, maybe it's the stories, but finding what you need to be your warm blanket. And for some of us, that warm blanket is going to be my warm knit blanket on my sofa during this season. And that's okay too. Last thing, it's okay to get help. right? So it is okay to decide that, you know what, I need some support. Whether this support is, say, a grief companion. Dr. Mary and I both obviously do holistic grief work. So we are people who provide counsel, right? So finding someone that does that, talking to your therapist. If you need a prescription, not everybody needs to take it, but if you need it, guess what?
It's okay.
Have at it, right? So finding what you need and doing that without shame. And the more we talk about it, I think the more we not that anyone needs permission, but the more we talk about it, the more we open people's eyes to the fact that they don't need permission to grieve and to breathe and to cry, right? The more we talk about it, the more we say, you don't need permission. You don't need my permission. What you need is somebody to see you, somebody to hear you, somebody to hold you. And holding doesn't necessarily mean actual touch, but holding space for you. That's what we need. And so during this holiday, if you need to be seen, make sure you get seen. If you need somebody to listen to you, make sure you have somebody listen to you. I might go live on a holiday, eat a little bit on screen and see who joins in and just talks, right? But what do you need during this season? Finding those things can be helpful. And I'll stop there, but there are a lot of practices that we can do to engage this idea of continuing bonds, right? That folks who have died, in some ways, we can't see them, but in many ways, I'm gonna bring out the pictures of people who aren't here. Maybe they can't have a meal, but we're gonna make a plate for them and sit it here at the altar and allow the pictures to be seen and their meal to sit there, even though they may not take that meal in that way. This might be a spiritual way for people, but I can hold pictures and prepare an altar that says Alberta, Pauline, Josephine, Bill, Salam, LaFay, Lamont. I can do an altar of pictures that says they're here with us this holiday season. And that might be something that people need to see as well. So lots of ways that we can practice wellness, right, during this season.
Yeah. I just want to add to all of that, you can also light a candle. It represents their light with you. And thank you. I have mine too. So you can light a candle on the table, on that empty chair that is in your house. It's a presence. It's an invitation. It's a light. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. That candle exercise was what introduced me to your grief work in January of 2017. And I still have, even though we didn't light them because we were in Kingsley Hall, we had the ones with the little, I still have my candle, my candle.
And that's turned into our Christmas tree.
Yeah. So for us, the year 2016, Noelle wanted at Thanksgiving to decorate the tree. And so in November, she decorated the tree, and it's with all of her ornaments, with all of her names since grade school. Noelle is all over that tree. And that tree has not gone down since December of 2016. It is still up, and everywhere we move, it's the first thing we put up.
And we know when someone's grieving because we will light the tree in the house.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what time of year it is. When that tree is lit, you are aware. And you know, now that our son lives on his own, but we know that one of us is going through when those lights are lit.
Yeah. Jamie, you talked about the preparing the dish and putting up the pictures. I think the sense, I think anything that's sensory can be an engaging comfort sometimes. Now, sometimes it can be an awakening or an alert.
Absolutely.
But like cooking the dishes, the smell of Grandma Shaw's Jean Naté, right? Like that's what she wore.
Right. It can work both. It can, but so this is where awareness, right? This is why I said we have this we are not emotionally intelligent. I just so an awareness of, I could be in a store today and hear a Stevie Wonder song and it pierced me a certain way. And now I got warm tears, right? Because today that song, now y'all know when the tears be warm, when you be like, oh, here go these warm tears, right? And then there's a time when I might play that same song, and now we two-stepping, right? Because so being aware of, there's no one way that it's going to hit you. That today it could awaken tears that don't stay. The tears don't stay. Today it might be tears. Tomorrow it might be laughter and dance. But knowing, yes, there are some things, because you're human. And that's also this gift in this, is that I get, I am not wishing suffering on people, right? So I want to make sure that I say that. I'm not wishing suffering, but I get to feel.
Right.
And sometimes the feeling is joyous and I laugh. Sometimes the feeling is sadness, and sometimes the feeling is wonder. But I feel, and that is that too is a reminder, right? That I am here, that there was connection, right? So sometimes there's this and there are going to be some years where, guess what? Holiday come, you don't feel nothing. In fact, you might be like, oh my goodness, it's Thanksgiving, right? And you realize it's Thanksgiving because you don't went into the stores and there's 200 people, and you like, why they here on Tuesday? It's just, oh, Thanksgiving is Thursday, right? So it is being okay with the way life brings it to you. And so, yeah, definitely the sensory, the sound, the smell, the taste, the feel, all of that. And it has its own power, and being open to the power that it brings in the moment. And that's why I say befriending grief. It is, what does it mean for me to allow this thing in, right? And not try to push it away, so that, right, pushing it away as if to avoid it, as if to, right? Just, I'm going to be one with her. We're going to do what we do in this moment, because this is also but a moment, right? And so that piece of befriending grief, even in this season, and feeling what you feel. And then for some folks, you might be with family. Don't be afraid to go into the bathroom. That's one space that you can kind of get into where folks are going to come in. Go to the bathroom, right? And be there for a minute. If you need a minute away, go outside or go to the bathroom. And so finding those ways where you're around people, but I need space too. And so I always find the bathroom a helpful place where you can just go, because nobody's following you in there.
Listen,
I love it. I love it.
We appreciate you taking the time. Final question. The topic of today was navigating the new, life after loss. So final question. And with this, I want you to also pair what you're doing in your current grief work. So what are your upcoming, what's on the horizon, what you're doing, with this last question. So what does hope look like after loss, when life is forever changed? What does hope look like? And this is on Mary, this is on your framework, because hope is the step before wholeness, right? On your framework, death, cry, lament.
Let me move aside. Yeah.
And then wholeness. So what does it look like after loss, when life is forever changed? And this is just your final word of encouragement.
Thank you. Thank you for asking about hope. Let me say that hope is the greatest gift that God gave to humanity. Without hope, the state of hopelessness renders all of us useless. Waste byproduct that just totally a zombie. And there are many people going through life in a state of hopelessness. But let me say that the acronym for HOPE is hearing other people's experiences. When you hear an experience, let me put it this way. My first encounter at the Compassionate America Society, I think I had just entered into my loss the first month when I was invited there. We sit in a circle and everybody's talking about their loss. And here I am thinking, my God, I lost my only son. And the story went around, you have 3 minutes to talk about this. The next lady sitting by me lost his 2 children, 2 sons, when the oldest one came from a university, one of the Virginia University, to come pick him up to go for school excursion in the same school. But they had an accident. Both of them are gone. Then imagine me, I'm next. Every weight of grief and suffering that I was feeling, God lifted. My empathy shifted to the person sitting to me because I still have 2 daughters. I've lost my only son, but at least the hope that I have somebody. This woman, she was older too. The children are 24. When the oldest one was 24, the other one was 19 or something. This was 14 years ago. Lost it all. Then this is where the lament become very, very powerful. For those who believe in theodicy, why does bad thing happen to good people, and you're going like you are losing your mind because you thought you are alone. That is because you have never heard somebody else's experience. Immediately, that transformed me to a state of gratitude. And from there on, what do I say? Thank you, God, for giving me 25 years with my son. Some people never had 1 day. Some didn't have 2 years. Some didn't have. It died in vitro. It died in their womb. They never got to see the baby cry. So hope is so critical. Another dimension of hope is the fact that God withheld for us the things of foreknowledge. Hear me. You don't know what is going to happen next day, tomorrow, this time, who's going to be here, who's not going to be here. He withheld that from us. Why? Because we cannot take it. We cannot. If we foreknew the calamity that is awaits on tomorrow, the same way he has given us grace and mercy each morning, sufficient to subdue those things. But he is divine. He's the only one that knows our tomorrow. He didn't give it to us. So he gave us this hope. And then along with that is a level of fear. It's a caution. The fear here is caution that we have, the hope, substance of things not seen. You haven't seen it yet, but you know you're going to be all right. So we can ride today until we get to tomorrow without not losing our mind on today for the things that is going to happen tomorrow. So when you look at hope, God is He has already given us everything we needed. And the greatest of them all, like I said, is hope. There is an experience that a lot of people, I don't want to say theologians or pastors, or when that darkness is a level of darkness that surround the human soul when hope is gone. So you could see somebody who is standing up preaching and telling you this, and something hit them and they just fall apart. They withdraw. You never hear from them. And the next thing you know, you say, this person has died. You say, what? In the process of dying, they didn't want anybody to see them. They didn't want anybody to come to talk to them. That state of darkness is a level of hopelessness in the human life that we pray we don't even get to. So hope, my dear, is the very thread that holds us, that connects us to God and prevent us from losing our mind. And the more we read books, the more we hear other people's experience, the more we talk to people, what happened? You get this heart of gratitude. And that is what carries us. I pray that we all can express a really deep gratitude, not because it is Thanksgiving, but going forward in our life, you find out that nothing really means nothing. You're not going to make a permanent decision on something that is temporary. You're crying today, but tomorrow it's all dry eyes. And if I may say a little bit about crying, I did a lot of work on that. It is also a gift to release the pressure. So imagine that pressure cooker for the women or men that can really get down on the kitchen and you put your food in that pressure cooker. And then when the steam is released, that's what God gave us our tears for. But we as a society has done our young men, our men in the society by telling them that they cannot grieve, they cannot cry. Don't cry, you are a man. And so they bundle it inside. The next thing you know, they are angry. They have no way of letting loose, of releasing those pressures. So I tell people that come to my, I have men coming to my grief counseling. We cry. Please, by all means, cry. You've just lost your mother, the only person that you have so close to you for all your life is gone. And then somebody said to me, but I have not cried yet. So we start doing the work and you get to cry. Right now in Japan, there are places now they are instituting men to go watch really sad movies or whatever to induce them to cry. You cannot be stoic all your life. We need to release, and that is the anger that we see in our community, in our young men. They have no way of releasing. We say our young men, they are misbehaving, but they have not had any outlet to release their grief. So they act out and they think, oh, these children are so bad. No. So we need to do better. So crying is really, really, it's a good thing. So practice it. All the men in our panel today and those that will hear you, it's a very good thing. Go to the bathroom and cry if you don't want your wife or somebody else to see you cry. Thank you. God bless.
Thank
I
you.
can say, Dr. Mary, you ain't say what you got going on.
Yeah, what's going on with the Center for Grief and Wholeness?
All right. In addition to the empty chair that I just released, I am still working on in 2026. I will be doing training on each of the model of grief because theologically, this is one of the framework God gave me this gift. This is not my intellect. I would never have been able to tell you this is the way you grieve biblically or theologically. No, I'm not that smart, but it was a gift from God. I realized He put me through it. By the time I finished and I saw it, I said, oh, this is what He has been doing. So I'm going to begin classes on it. I'm writing up the First book, Broken Hearted: A Mother's Grief to Wholeness, is the textbook, and talk in detail in this in the framework that I operate on. And I am right now writing the lesson plan for all of that, a workbook to go with that. So beginning, it probably will start in February or March. I will advertise that so people can learn to grieve and know that is for those people that are grounded in the Bible. This is biblical. You will be dealing with scriptures, and you will be walking with the Holy Spirit and having all those encounters. And then at the end of all that, hopefully we will, by the end of the year, we will be able to begin the work for an anthology that will collect our stories. So it's a two-part: the lessons, the training, the certification, the story writing of each other's grief, and then putting it in an anthology book and publishing that for our community.
Woo, thank you. All right, Dr. J.
So quickly, I'll say, I wrestle with the definition of hope. And so right now I am saying hope is a disciplined practice or posture. What do I have here? To imagine life and justice and possibility in the face of what is happening in the present and in light of what I know of the past, right? So Dr. Valerie Bridgman talks about informed hope, which says, like, I know exactly what took place, right? It's not something that bypasses suffering or anything like that. So this posture of being able to imagine a future. That's where I am right now with hope. It's just as my theology has expanded really beyond language of sort of just Christianity. We can do that a whole nother time. So that's what I think of hope. And I do think hope is missing, and I understand why in many ways, right? I understand what's happening around, and I just understand it. You all know that I do work as a director of counseling and wellness for an organization in Philadelphia that supports the city of Philadelphia in response to homicide, and then 2 areas of Philadelphia, West and Southwest, where I was born and raised, with other acts of violence. And so we are supporting people who, and so I see this where I'm like, I see the absence of hope and where the absence of hope gets us, right? So I still wrestle with definition of hope and what it means. And so I'll leave that there. In terms of what I'm doing in my future, the Ratchet Grief Project podcast launches in December. So we've had some conversations. Will be some solo episodes where it's just me kind of kicking it with you, talking about things, inviting you to practices, and then there are conversations with other folks, and looking for conversations with panels. If I haven't reached out to you yet and you're listening, I probably will soon, right? Like, it's holiday, just know we're gonna be talking. So that podcast is launching next month. The Ratchet Grief Project is also a 501c3, and so I do teaching and training under that umbrella, just like I do consulting under the umbrella of Thoughtful Transitions. Thoughtful Transitions continues to provide individuals and families with support, but we've been doing a lot of work with denominations, and so we have a few contracts where we are helping churches understand what their future means. For some churches, that means we are in palliative care, moving toward hospice, and we'll say goodbye. And some churches, we are talking about what it means to combine. So I'm working with several churches in that way. We'll continue to do that work in 2026. I have one book that'll be out in 2026, maybe 2, to be quite honest, in 2026. But there's another book that it will be out in 2027, which I had to change. I'm having to change the title for, and I will not say the title on here. It's a little bit too ratchet for the audience that I'm with, and so I won't say the title on here. But it's more my doctoral project, my doctoral thesis. So research around Black women in grief, and it is beautiful. It is beautiful. So I look forward to that being able to come into the world And what else is happening in me? I am imagining and living into what it means to be well, right? So I've lost weight and continue to lose weight. I am getting more active again. Listen, able to do my workouts the way. And so that is also for me part of this work. I need to be well to join folks. Now I'll want to be well for me,
Yes.
but also I need to be right for me, right? But I also need to be well for like it's mine. And remember, since there's no individual action that does not have a communal consequence, it's my wellness. But what does my wellness do when I get into community? It influences and it guides and it invites others into maybe a new space of wellness so that we can be well together. Those are some of the big things. I'm working with Dr. Danny Bahuro again to do some CPE work. And I'm saying this, everybody won't, well, I don't know how many people will hear this. I don't say nothing. I'm working on a PhD in psychology. Y'all don't say nothing about that. So just, I'm doing all of this and trying to be well, right? And in the immediate future, I told my mom I was going to spend the night tomorrow. I might not because I got to do my thing tomorrow night, but I'm going to spend time at my mom's house and just and chill, right? And love on her and be there and laugh with her. And her best friend died last year, the end of last year. I feel like the end of last year. And her brother died in 2023. So she's had some significant losses. And there are moments when I look at her and I see it, right? And I say, Mom, what you think about Uncle Bugs? And then we get to talk about my uncle, right? And her big brother and stuff. And so in the future, continuing to do work in community, doing more research, and then being good to me and making sure that I invite myself to grieve in all the ways that make sense, and being there with and for my mom. And as Dr. Mary talked about, what does community mean? What does that look like? Ensuring that I have community that reminds me daily to make myself friendly, but is also friendly to me. And so that's what's on the horizon for me. So I'll be going live a lot more often. I don't do a great job with that, I admit it, but I just plan to be out there spreading the word. Again, something Dr. Mary said, you don't have to grieve alone. So what does it mean to just look up and know that there's somebody talking and holding space? And I hope to be one of those people as a grief researcher.
And that's amazing. And if you remember, Jamie, that's where a lot of your work began. A lot of your work began in your weekly, almost daily conversations you were having that really brought you to the forefront of people seeing you talk about grief in a way they never heard it. Right. That's the beginning, I believe, of Thoughtful Transitions.
Yeah, 2019, just before the pandemic.
Yep.
Which then, right? So yeah, had been doing it, but not in seasons. And so one last thing, please. There was a time in my life when I felt like, and occasionally it still sprinkles through there, right? But there was a time in my life when I felt like I was behind because I finished seminary, my MDiv at 40, right? I was like, I gotta finish. That's why I finished in 2 years. I quit my job and just took classes because I got it, right? Because I'm behind. And if I move a little faster, work a little harder, I can catch up. And I am 9 months, 8 months away from 50, and I there's no catch up. I am here. And so that is also, I think, sometimes we have to grieve what we imagined for ourselves, or sometimes we have to start to detach ourselves from ideas that were never ours in the first place, right? And so just for those of you who are grieving, we keep saying that it is natural and nothing wrong with you. Your process is going to look different from somebody else's. Your timeline is going to look different from somebody else's. And if part of you was wondering when you going to get here, like what the thing when in your time, you'll get there. In your time, right? So you're grieving in your time, you'll get there. And so just being 50, I feel like Dr. Mary, those worries and thoughts, I don't care about it. It's more than just age. It's more than just understanding grief. It's also probably being menopausal. We can have a whole grief conversation about that. In fact, I'm going to invite folks to that conversation. But yeah, I just wanted to say that just as I age, there is also something that reminds me to really be well and to do the work that spirit and creation and the universe has called me to do. And that is grief work. And if I am well, then, the community is well. And I enter into conversations with how are the children? If the children are not well, we are not well. And our work is to ensure that the children are well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man. Well, listen, I just want to take this time to thank you both for carving out space to have this conversation. Your work and your voices are so necessary. They're so valued. And the impact of them will live beyond this moment and this year, right? We want to archive this so that it can be a continual resource, so that someone maybe 2 years from now may be looking for a resource to help them navigate a new loss, and they can find it, and then they can find you, right? Because loss doesn't stop at the end of the season, right? We're from, and our ancestors tell us, we say things like, it's the end of the year, right? God is doing his cleanup work, right? God is doing God's work, right? And so I think that because loss is a continual process, grief is a continual process, and we always need to have the resources. So we are speaking blessings over all the work that you're doing, right? Yeah. Jay, I saw the skinny face. I saw it. I saw the skinny face, ma'am. I am jealous because mine is puffy, but don't worry. By the time we do this next year, whether I got to cut it or it's going to be skinty too. But I am, just know that God needs the work that you're doing, right? God, it's a calling. So God has called you, and through pain and process, prepared you to go into spaces that others shy away from, because you are not westernized nor colonized. So you bring the fullness of the ancestors, ancestral healing, and ancestral religion into this space, ancestral spirituality into this space for the healing of our Ubuntu, right? Our community. And you're so necessary. So listen, I celebrate you. I don't have anything else. You got anything else?
Look, y'all took everything I had written down. I loved it.
Listen, she got paper. Listen, she got papers of notes that y'all just spoke to. So we celebrate you. We love you. And y'all have an amazingly whole holiday.
Yeah. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Good to meet you, Dr. Mary. I know we'll connect again.
Oh, I'm going to send y'all contacts.
We'll see each other again soon.
Absolutely.
Love y'all.
Take care.
And thank you all for all the participants and viewers online. Thank you for joining us. Check out the Center for Grief and Wholeness, and you will see I have many books out there, not just The Empty Chair, and I have many to be birthed.
All right. Love y'all.
Take care.
God bless.